DaVinci Resolve can be viewed as a very complicated program to learn. And the reason why is because there is so much possible within DaVinci Resolve. I wanted to make a video that cuts out all of that, and it's just a very simple way to take some footage that you have on your phone or your camera, get it into DaVinci Resolve, put it onto a timeline, change the sequence of the clips, maybe cut a little bit out, throw a title on there, a transition, render it out, then send it to any social media platform that you want. As simple as that. We don't need to make this complicated. I'm going to gloss over a lot of stuff here. If you are interested in any of those topics, in the bottom corner, you'll see a number pop up. That is going to correspond with the link that is in the description where you can find out more information on that particular subject. So let's just start up DaVinci Resolve. Once it's started up, we see this window. This is referred to as our project manager. When you save a project, it's going to be stored in here. In the back end, it's stored in a database that's on your system. Don't really need to be concerned with that. Most programs save different files, like project files and stuff like that. This makes it super simple. Everything is in one place. There is the ability to save project files. We're not going to go over that now. Like I was saying initially, there's a link in the description for that. Starting up DaVinci Resolve, we're going to make a project. We can click on this untitled project. That will always be there. We can just double click on it. Or if you know what your project name is, we can start the project with a project name. So to do that, we're going to come down here and click on new project. I'm just going to call this project 1. So I'm just going to remove this whole untitled area and then hit create. It will then start up DaVinci Resolve. And we know that we're in that project because it says it up here, project 1. That is the project in which we're currently in. DaVinci Resolve is broken up into a bunch of different pages. Each page does a different workflow within the pipeline of post-production. We're just going to be using edit. And the reason why we're using edit over, let's say, the cut page, if you do know a little bit about DaVinci Resolve, is because the edit page is just going to be like all of the other editors, where the cut page is slightly different. It does a lot of things behind the scenes and could just confuse you if you are coming from another platform. So we're just going to stick with this, as well as on the edit page. I find that it is the best tool to learn because you can go to any other editing tool if you ever want to, and the edit page has all of the edit tools on the page. The cut page has a lot of those tools, but they're hidden within a tool. So this just makes it significantly easier. For now, I'm just going to go into Workspace, and you should probably do this too. Go into Reset UI Layout, and that's just going to make sure that your interface looks the same as mine so that you don't get lost along the way. And then for me, I'm just going to go to full screen view because we don't need to see the Windows stuff. So we have a full screen here. So from here, if yours still looks different than mine, it's because of resolutions. So as the resolution gets smaller or as it gets larger, there are things within the resolution that aren't visible by default, that you'll either have a button up here that you have to click, or you might have to click buttons like this, which make different areas bigger or smaller. It doesn't mean that you don't have the functionality. It's just that it's positioned in a slightly different area. What we're going to do is first bring in some media. Now, bringing in media, it's just very simple to do. I just have it right on my computer where I'm just going to drag it in. I would prefer for you to not edit off of, let's say, an SD card, because the second that that's pulled out of your computer, DaVinci Resolve is not going to be able to find that file. When we drag footage from our computer into DaVinci Resolve isn't doing anything but just knowing the location in which it's stored. DaVinci Resolve never moves files when we're editing, when we're bringing content in this way. If you do want more information about moving files, that's all going to be on the media page outside the scope of this video. So we have all of our footage here. We're just going to highlight it all and drag it right in. The first thing we're going to be prompted with is, because the frame rate of the footage that we're bringing in is different than the defaults in DaVinci Resolve for me and the media that I brought in. So it's asking me, do I want the timeline frame rate to match the frame rate of the media in which I brought in? 9 times out of 10, you're going to want to do this because we do want to have the same frame rate as our media. So now that we have it in DaVinci Resolve, I can move that. And one thing that I wanted to quickly show you here is that we have an MP3, an MP4, and MOV. Now, the MP4 and MOV, those aren't file codecs. Those are just file types. They're also known as containers. That is just what the file is stored in. It's kind of like, like when you have files in like a zip folder, that's just the container in which holds the video. The content inside is referred to as like a codec. That's how it's when it's compressed. And those codecs are going to determine if you can bring them into DaVinci Resolve. So a lot of situations, if you ever notice that when you drag it into DaVinci Resolve, it just doesn't appear there, it's because you don't have the correct codec. So I wanted to quickly just clear that up for you. And so there are other tools that you can switch from codec to codec, but just so you know. So I have all my media in here. I'm just going to click this button here because I don't need all that extra space. I only have a couple of clips here. And we can see that we don't have anything down here. This is the timeline area. And so we just have to drag a clip down here and it will automatically add on the timeline. As we can see right here, it says timeline 1. And now we have a video track and we have an audio track here. If we ever want to add more audio tracks or video tracks, we just drag up and it'll add more, right? So that's how we added in here. If we take a look over here now, we can see that this viewer, we can see all the stuff that's on the timeline. This little thing here, this orange thing, that is our playhead. So we can drag that around by just clicking and then moving my mouse cursor, holding in the click. We can see that, and then we can click the button to play. You can also use spacebar to start and stop. So we have that ability there. Now let's add on another clip. So I'm just going to, instead of dragging down, I'm going to double click, and now we'll see that it stays over here. And then this is referred to as our source view. And so in here, let's say we didn't want to bring in the whole clip. We only wanted a small portion. Actually, let me switch over to this clip because this will make more sense here. So there is an area in this clip here where she looks up. So we don't want this whole beginning part, maybe when she's just looking up like that. So we want that to be the start point. So I can click this little button here as an in, and we can see now that there's a gray line here. And we can just drag along and say right there, let's have that as the out. So that's where we wanted the clip to start and end. Now, all we have to do is we can just drag it down like that, and we can add it in. There's a couple of other ways that we can do it. We also have this insert here. We can add that on, but the thing to note about an insert edit, it's all based off of where your playhead is. So if my playhead's in the middle of this clip and I click insert, it's obviously going to cut that clip up and throw it in there. There are a bunch of different other options, but I just want to show you those. As far as dragging, we also have this button down here. If I drag it down, we see we have an audio and a video. If we just wanted the video, we could just drag just down the video. If we wanted the audio, we could just drag down the audio. So we have that as options as well. If we wanted some advanced ways, and I'm not going to go over these, but I just want to show you that they exist, we could drag over here and we have a bunch of different ways that we could also apply that edit to as well. So yeah, so those are the different ways that we could add footage in. So now we're watching this, and let's say we want to remove a portion. We want to move this portion. Once the green shirt guy disappears, we don't want any more of this clip. So there's a couple of different things that we could do here. We could obviously drag the end of this over, right? Now we have a gap that we have to delete. We could also click this little button here and we could cut that. And so now if we look, we have multiple clips here. So we could take that and we could hit the delete key and it'll remove that. Speaking about delete keys, this is where one thing is a little bit different when it comes to Macs, Windows, and Linux. So I'm going to say that Windows and Linux is PC, and then we have Mac. So on a Linux or a PC, we have a backspace key and a delete key. If we were to click on here and we hit the backspace key, we have a space. If we click on this and we hit the delete key, it's going to ripple delete. The backspace and delete key are the same key on Mac. And so when we click on something, it's just referred to as delete. So we hit that key, it's going to delete the space. If we want to keep the space, we have to do a forward delete, I believe it's called. And that's using, I believe it's the function key, and then hit the delete key. So you have those as options as well. Okay, so next, let's add in a video, or excuse me, the audio. So I have up here the song, and actually let me throw my headphones on, and we'll drop that on. And one thing that you'll notice here is now I have an element that goes way past where I can see. So if I was to then play this as it goes on, I'm just going to mute this for now. We can see that it scrolls. So We have this button down here that we can go back and forth with, but I wanted to quickly show you something that is really cool with DaVinci Resolve. We have this thing called full extent zoom, so if we click that, it'll always show everything that is on the timeline. So if I was to take this clip and now remove it, we can see that it changes the zoom. If we were to add that clip on, because it's longer, it's always going to show that. So if I was to duplicate that and bring this over, whoops, it's always going to show however long the timeline is, right? So that is an option that is pretty cool, and it makes it super simple to automatically change the length of our timeline here. We also have the ability to zoom in and out. We have a detailed zoom, which kind of zooms in pretty far. It's not all the way zoomed in, and then we have our custom zoom that we were working with before. So I'll just go to fixed extent zoom like we were using before. Now, one thing that you would notice that I did there is I turned off the sound, right? So these controls over here, that is just for monitoring our timeline. If we were to render this out, it's still going to have audio because there's obviously audio on the timeline. So this on and off, so to mute or play, and the volume is just for when we're watching it on the timeline and changing how we're monitoring it. And the same with dim. If we wanted to reduce the volume here, this is where we're going to go into the inspector. The inspector is going to be where we're going to change all of the parameters for all of the video, for all of the media that's on our timeline. So if we click on this particular video clip and we come up to the inspector, we can see that now it's on audio and we have a volume, so we can change the volume of this. If we ever want to reset anything, we have this button up here with a plus in it that's going to reset everything that is here. And the reason why I say everything is because if we look in the pitch controls, we have two different sliders. If we click this button, it'll reset everything in there. If we click these individuals, it'll just reset those. So we have that ability. The other way that you can do this too is we can just double click on the name and it'll also reset that as well. So that's how we would do that. And then if you know what keyframes are, we have the ability to turn on keyframes there as well. Okay, so let me zoom in a little bit here. We have these little things that are on the ends of all of our tracks here. Whoops, let me zoom out a little bit and show you these. We have them everywhere, and that is to add on a fade. So that's a really nifty way because a fade's kind of something you do pretty regularly. So we can just drag this out, and now if we listen, well, let's listen to it before it. Okay, and now if we add that fade on, it just fades in that audio, right? Super simple. Same way with video clips. So at the beginning, it starts off with that, and we can add on a fade. Super simple, right? So those are some little options that you have there. If you don't, if for some reason you don't see the little piece there, it's because that particular track is a little too small. So if I make it smaller, we can see that it's actually make it smaller. Okay, so we can see that we don't actually see it there. And so what we can do is we can just simply click in here and then make that bigger so you can see the little fader there. Sometimes those get lost depending on how big your interface is. Okay, so next let's add on a title. So we'll come over into the effects, click that little effects thing, and we'll go into titles. Now we have these super basic titles, and then we have fusion titles. DaVinci Resolve comes with a lot of fusion titles, and if you look online, you'll see a lot of fusion titles that look kind of, they look a little bit more dynamic, a little cooler than just default text. So we have some default text. Hey, sometimes these work, right? They're super easy to process on your system. Sometimes they just work. So we'll add it on there. Over here in the inspector again, clicking on it in the inspector. Now under video, we have the title area, and we can just simply go through and change everything to get our title to show up just like that. So we're clicking on it, having the inspector open, and we have the ability to change the title. We can click this little button to see all the different controls that we have for this particular title. I'll quickly show you another one here that are in. So there's a bunch of these fusion titles that come with DaVinci Resolve that just look a little bit different. They do different things. I'm going to mute that audio for now. A couple of different that look different. I also have on the website this free pack, the version 2 pack, and they all look a little different too. So let me quickly show you one of those. So we have this one here, and let's zoom in. As it comes on, it creates these boxes, and then we have two different titles. So we can come in here and change the titles. they all work the same. They all kind of do the same thing. But yeah, so you have a bunch of different options. When you get more involved into DaVinci Resolve, you could actually end up making these. But as a beginner, it's a bit much to learn how to make these particular titles. So that is something that you also have. So actually, let's just leave those there. If we go into, so next, let's add on a transition. So we have just normal transitions. We have a lot of transitions in here that comes with DaVinci Resolve, free and paid version. They all do something a little bit different. So let's go into here. Let's do this push transition. So we can drop that on. And as you can see, the transition isn't going, the transition isn't going between the clips. And that is because of something that you need, which is referred to as handles. So handles is the extra footage, because remember we were cutting clips up. It's the extra footage that is still there that DaVinci Resolve can work with within these transitions. So an easy way to see this is if we come over to this trim edit mode, we click on it, and then click on the end, we can see that we have a little bit of extra there, right? See the gray box? That's showing how much extra video clip we have. If we come over to this side, we can see it's red because there isn't any extra there. So if I was actually to pull this back, now we have a little bit on one side and a little bit of the other side. Now, sometimes that isn't possible to do that, but I just want to quickly show you how this works. So before we could only put the transition on the one side, and we couldn't have it right in the middle. So now if I come back over to my select mode, and now if I add this on here, we can add it in on either side and right into the middle. So this particular transition, it just moves it from one side to the other. If I click on it, we have a couple of different controls in here that we can do for this particular title, transition that we can do, right? But I guess I'll kind of pitch my own little transitions here. We could also go into my transitions. I'll quickly show you here. And this is where getting the custom transitions is kind of cool. So we had that one that did that, but then we could also add on this transition, which kind of works the same way. So I think that we were going the other way, actually. Yeah, like this, and we can turn on motion blur. So now if I turn this to let's go to 15. So now we have that turned on. If I play this, we can see that now there's like some motion blur, kind of like it's pushing it over. Just a different look. So there's a ton of different options that you can explore with those. They can obviously add a lot more to the workflow, so we're just going to keep it super simple. So the only other things that we really want to do with our edit at this point is if I go into the full extent zoom, we can see that we have a bit here that we still need to cut off. So because our video clips stop right here. So we can do a couple of different things. One, we can grab the end of this, we could drag it all the way over like that. Or what we could do is we can come into the blade mode, and that allows us to cut up clips and then move around those elements. So I'm gonna bring the blade tool right over here. I'm gonna cut, and now it made a little cut there. So now these are two different elements. Before it was one whole element. And if I grab the blade tool, select, come back to the select tool, now it's a separate element, and we can just easily delete that. And then it's as easy as that. Now let's put a little feather on the end here, just like that. And let's actually remove all these titles. And what is this? Okay, that one's fine. Let's listen to this. The only other thing is we might want to reduce some of this audio here, like the level. So we'll click on that, and we have the volume here, so we can just reduce that. Maybe something like that is fine. Again, we have the ability to do keyframes if you want to change it throughout the course of the timeline. We have that. If we ever want to make a video clip, larger, smaller, scale it, whatever it may be, we can click on it. In the video, we're in the inspector still, we have the ability to zoom, move it around. We also, I'll double click those. We can also come over here, and we have a drop down here, but the transform, if we just have it, if we click it and we have it highlighted, now we have on-screen controls where we can just easily move it around just like that. We can see that these values are changing over here. Ever need to reset it, just come over here, reset, and it'll reset just like that. So that is we brought some stuff onto the timeline. We have some audio in here. We have a title on here. We did have a transition. Let's go grab another transition here and add a transition. We'll just add a simple cross dissolve. Perfect. And let's go back and add on this particular clip in here. Let's actually add that to the end here. So if I was to add it onto the end here, we have these buttons here that we can click to bring it in. Let's close this quick so we can make sure that we have the right clip. We can add that on and we can see that it scoots over everything, but maybe we don't want the audio to get scooted over. So all we have to do is we can either lock it, and when we hit that button, it'll scoot it over. Or what we can do is we can click this button here, which will turn off the auto selector and add that in. Auto selector is kind of complicated. Oh, I had lock on too. Let me show you quickly. Lock off, auto selector off, add it on. It does the same thing as well. So we now need to make this a little longer, just like that. So there we are. Maybe I want to make this a little shorter. So we can bring this over, maybe delete this space like we were talking about with deleting. And maybe not have that on there. So let's say this was our edit. We were happy with how this is working out. Now it's time to go and render. So over on the deliver page here on the left-hand side, we have the render settings, and across the top, we have a bunch of different presets. You can obviously add presets in here, but if we were to go to YouTube, Vimeo, Twitter, Dropbox, a bunch of different options here. We have all of those up here. If your particular platform isn't here, we can just do it in custom. It's perfectly fine. If you are going to like another social media, typically an MP4 with a code of H.264, which is right here, is what you're going to typically want to do. If you're on the free version, you have to use the native. You can't use the NVIDIA, which doesn't really matter. And then as far as resolution, frame rate, those are all going to be specific to wherever platform that you're going to, and that's going to be on the project settings that you're going to want to set those beforehand. And then as far as the quality, this is going to be specific to what is referred to as bitrate for that particular platform. What I tend to tell people most times is just to go over to the Twitter, and these settings that are on Twitter, most platforms will accept. It just makes it a lot easier. And so all we'll do here is we're going to set a name that we want. So this is whatever we want the file name to be once we're done, when it's on our system. And then you just have to pick a location. So I will just put this in my videos folder. And then once we're done with that, just make sure down here our render is entire timeline, and we can take a look, make sure we don't have anything extra at the end. So that is our whole timeline. We can just click here, add to render queue. So adding it to the render queue, what that will enable us to do is now render it out. Now you might say, well, why isn't that button just to render it out? It's because if you're going to a bunch of different platforms and they all require something a little bit different, or if you need to have different files for a customer, it allows you to pick all of those options before your system renders. Because typically when your system renders, you're just going to leave it and not use it until it's done rendering. Depending on how long your timeline is, it could bog down your system, and you doing anything else on anything extra on your system is just adding to the time it's going to take. So once it's over here, we can just click render. It will then go through your whole timeline, render it out the way it looked on the edit page. And then once we're done there, we can then go right into that particular file. We can take a look at it. You can also come over here. We can right click and we can go reveal or open in file location. It'll take you to that folder that you initially wanted to save into. And then there's your file. You can then export that out to, or you can then upload it to whatever the platform is that you're looking to share with. So I think that kind of concludes all of my how-to guide on making it as simple as possible, learning how to edit. There are a ton of different things that you can obviously learn in DaVinci Resolve. I wanted to keep it as simple as possible. If you are interested in learning more about DaVinci Resolve, obviously, take a look at what else is on the channel. If you are interested in actually taking a legitimate course and learning everything, and then at the end, actually getting certified in DaVinci Resolve, some people find that of interest. It's something that you can put on your resume. So after all of that, hopefully you're a little more confident in editing something in DaVinci Resolve. There is a ton in DaVinci Resolve, but you don't need to know all of it to get out a good edit. Over time, you can definitely learn all the different tricks of the trade and what is available in DaVinci Resolve for you to take advantage of. If there is something that I didn't cover here and you're struggling to find it online, let me know down in the comments. And if it's something that I think other beginners would definitely benefit from learning from, I will definitely take a look at making a video on that subject. But with that being said, thank you all again for watching. And until the next one, peace Have a good one, guys.